20 seconds.
Awarded Best Station in the Nation 2020.
Hi everyone, I am back, and today we have a very, very cool Tuesday hour. So, if you're new, this is the Lower Left Tales with your host Trinity Gwen, or you can call me Trin, whatever fits your fancy. I have put together an idea that I thought was really cool and can be applicable to everybody. So, but for a quick little, before I get into anything, today we're going to be talking about hustle culture and why I think it's ruining storytelling. But before I get into that, I do want to talk about what the show is about. If this is new to you, if you're just listening and you're like, whoa, this is brand new. So this is the Lore Love Tales, in which it's kind of self-explanatory. It's tales of a lover of lore, someone who loves storytelling in all sorts of mediums and books, music, TV show, radio, film, all of those things. And I compile all of the things that we consume with media and how we live our day to day and why does it impact us and how does it impact us. So, yes, every week, though, through my Instagram, I make a small poll throughout the week going over the topic or something around the topic adjacent to what I talk about this week. And this is about... So sorry, I'm trying to look at my poll. It's not loading. Oh my gosh. Anyway, but while it loads, I'm looking up... I'm talking about nonfiction and fiction. And the difference between it, obviously, is, fiction, people usually like make the stories up. Nonfiction are people who usually write autobiographies, memoirs, self-help, things of that nature. And I was curious because I wanted to see how many people are still reading fiction or prefer fiction, or how many people prefer nonfiction. Now, I didn't argue that it would have gotten completely nonfiction would have gotten blown out of the water. I thought that same thing, the same concept. But honestly, wait a minute. I know what's wrong. I know why. Because I think the poll expired. I think. I'm not too sure. But either way, around the time that I checked, because it's not loading, 70-ish% said that they read fiction, and about 30-ish% said like nonfiction. And what's interesting to me is I think it's slowly getting back. I think slowly nonfiction is emerging because from what I've seen, especially on TikTok, is this constant need to reevaluate yourself, find a sense of belonging in yourself, find a routine, and however that looks, you may need help. So you're going to buy these books. You're going to buy the 48 Laws of Power. You're going to buy the Let Them Theory. You're going to get Atomic Habits. You're going to buy Everything I Know About Love. All of these titles that I have constantly been seeing for several months. Well, even years, if 48 Laws of Power. But I have I have a theory that I talk about. Well, not a theory necessarily. It's just an opinion that I have about people who read 48 Laws of Power. Not all, but some. Whoever reads it, and if it's their favorite book, you need to stay away from them because they are probably the biggest manipulators on the planet, because people tend to use that book as a sense or as a source of manipulation. I've never read a page of 48 Laws of Power. Will I? I'm not really sure. I think, if it's an excerpt that I have to read for a class, sure, of course. But I'm not really too keen on understanding the 48 Laws of Power and then all the other books written by Robert Greene, who has also read like Laws of Attraction and Seduction, things of that nature. I think, honestly, the use of those books can have a harmless approach to it. Of course, absolutely. But honestly, I think the reason why I made this whole title, this whole idea, was just because, like, I feel like we're losing the plot. I feel like we're losing the idea. Why are we doing so many tasks? Why are we doing so much to increase our productivity with each other. I don't know why my Instagram is not working, guys. But every week every week I do an Instagram poll, but is it working? I actually have no idea what's happening. It's like everybody else's is loading except for mine. What if I got hacked? I don't think I got hacked. It's fine. But if you would like to be a part of those polls, you can follow me on Instagram, Tren, TREN_MONAE. So I do that around a couple of days, or maybe the day before I come in and do the Tuesday hour, and then I share the poll, and then we move on from there. So my thing is, though, I was thinking that fiction was going to be a lot more, like it was going to be about 80%. I wish I knew that I can see the actual results that I can know, but regardless, it was the nonfiction portion was a little bit bigger than I thought. But another thing, I forgot to introduce myself a little bit more. I'm a Pratt major here at DePaul. I am pursuing a degree in public relations and advertising. I'm a musician. I play trombone, and I do all the things. We meet every Tuesday today, or like today's Tuesday. We meet every Tuesday from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. And if this is something that you like, add it to your calendar. Add a little, reminder or something like that. But why is the poll important? Like I said, the hustle culture, the idea of waking up at 5 o'clock, getting ready, going to the gym, coming back, eating a full breakfast, doing all of these things before 12 has been the norm lately in the past several months, maybe actually in the past few years. And I feel like, granted, this is a very productive way of living, but in the grand scheme of things, when you really look at it black and white, it's kind of damaging. And before I even get into my whole spiel, I have to let you know, this is something that I myself am struggling with. I feel like there have been times where I have constantly overworked myself for years, and I'm still trying to do that. But regardless, we're going to get into this because I have some really cool things that I want to share that I've learned when I do my little sneaky studying, or when I try and find the topics. They usually come to my notes and then I share them with you. So I feel like I said, those titles that I mentioned before, I'm not saying that they're not effective, but the overall goal, feel like it's just chasing this culture of, getting everything done. Because honestly, especially from a college student standpoint, there have been times in my life where I felt like I have so many things to do with so much little time. And this actually happened in one of my classes last quarter when I was in my intercultural communication class. And I don't even know if it's changed now because of the whole administration and everything like that. I'm not sure if the course title has changed, but if it hasn't, don't mind me. It was just talked about. It was circulated, but even still. Stephanie Howell was my professor, and she's awesome. But before, I usually come in those classes about 30-40 minutes early because I'm a commuter, so I don't have any more time to just lay around and just sit in my class until class starts. And these are usually times where I have a conversation with my professor and we talk about, hey, what are we talking about today? What are we learning today? How was your weekend? Things of that nature. And then, of course, a couple of other students fall in. So with about 20 minutes, maybe 15, 20 minutes before the class started, one of my other classmates came in, and I believe he was a freshman. Yeah, he was a freshman. And my professor, she was like, hey, how are you feeling? How is it going? I don't know if this was around a pivotal point of the quarter, like it was midterms or finals, but it was just we had some time in at this point. And my classmate said, I feel like there's so much to do and so much little time. I feel like I have no grasp on anything. He was just basically, in the grand scheme of things, he was saying what I said earlier, like feeling like there's so many things to do with so much little time. And I felt like, one, I was like, whoa, I feel like it's deja vu. And two, I was like, wow, I can finally kind of be on the other side of this, because at this point, I think he had mentioned he was 18. So, and I'm 21. So when I had saw that, I was like, wow, maybe it is just like age and stuff like that. But I tried to give him the best advice that I could. I'm no guru. I'm not licensed or anything, but from what my knowledge of my own perspective has helped is if it can help somebody, that's all that I ever want. So I told him, first I acknowledged it. Because one thing I truly do hate about confiding in people that are older than you is the fact that they just they don't realize that they're dismissing it. But there are times where, like, I said I'm in my 20s, so I would say something like, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm so tired, I'm exhausted, I don't know what I'm doing with my life and stuff like that." And the person who's older than you, whoever it may be, a relative, whoever, they're always like, "Oh my god, how old are you?" And they're like, and you respond, and you're like, "Oh, like 21," and they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're fine." And it's like, okay, well, yes, I know that I'm gonna be okay, but in where I am right now, it surely doesn't feel like it. But where I fail to understand is, especially, okay, from this book that I read that I love so much that I talked about last week. Last week we talked about art and why it inspires us and how we talk to each other. Not talk to each other, but I basically went into BoJack Horseman and looked at all of the quotes that I found that are really cool and how they resonate with me in my life, and why shows that we rewatch so many times have such a grasp on us. If you want to see that, there's no archive on Radio DePaul, but I personally record them myself and I put them on my YouTube. If you want to watch that, it's Trend Universe. It's like all bunched together, one word. And I usually advise people to search it up by channel and not by like just search. I'm still working. I'm trying to be consistent, so I'm not going to be showing up at the top of the list. So the best thing to do is just look through channels. But I digress. I was saying what I was getting with that. Last week I talked about this book that I finished called Tuesdays with Maury. It's not an older book. It's not the oldest book, but it's been out there for a while. And it's getting a lot of traction. And I started listening to it. And I love this book. And he talks about age, Maury specifically. And he talks about how children or like kids younger than him or people younger than him talk about how they hate to get to be old and things of that nature. And there's been just like how it is now, there's this urge to anti-age and to pause aging and make yourself look 10 times younger. There's facials out there that make you, rewind your age. And me personally, there was a point in my life where I was like, oh my gosh, I have to get old. But then I was like, oh my gosh, I get to get old. I cannot wait to see myself from 20 years from now. I can just 42-year-old Trend, because I haven't turned 22 yet, but 42-year-old Trend just chilling, probably reading. Hopefully she has her kids by now, but she's just a mom. I can't wait to see that. And basically, Maury, he talks about how he doesn't grow jealous of people, especially when people get in their 30s and 40s and like, man, I wish I could be 20 again. I wish I could be those things again. But in reality, you have been those things. You've lived through all of them before because you've done it. So don't necessarily feel like, I don't know, this is way easier said than done, and especially coming from somebody who's 21, I get it. But people, I feel like when you're in that age, try not to. Like, I don't want to say it from such a not a privileged point in my life, but if it makes sense, it's like you've gone through the confusion, you've gone through that. I was at work yesterday, and I think I was having a conversation with my coworker, and she used to work somewhere before she worked where our job is now. She talked about this older woman and how she only wanted 2 bananas at the grocery store. She didn't want the whole bunch. She would ask, and she would only get 2. And I was like, I love that. Senior citizens, when they get to a point in their life, when they've been around for a long time, they know exactly what they want. And they know exactly what they need. They're not going to beat around the bush. I need 2 bananas. I don't need the whole bunch. And I'm like, I aspire to be like that. I would love to just know exactly what I want to get. I hate this uncertainty, being kind of unsure of where my life is going. When you're a senior citizen, you're just like, I've done the whole thing. I just want to go outside and smell the roses. That's about it, But yeah, I long to see myself old and gray in my wrap dresses. Soon. It's a little ways away from now, but regardless, I'm just saying, there's this constant hustle culture that I'm trying to like recenter back into this. But yeah, I see this all the time on TikTok when they're like, here's how you make use of your time. Or there'll be like women who go, this is my 5 to 9 before my 9 to 5, when they get up at 5 o'clock and they go to the gym and they make this breakfast, this elaborate thing, and they take all these vitamins and they do all this stuff. And granted, I'm not knocking their routine. I'm sure they get a lot of results out of it and they feel like a better sense of self. But I think about that, and then I think about other people who don't live in the US. I think about everybody in Europe and everybody, I feel like just outside of the US in general, outside of North America, maybe just outside of the United States. I will say that their work culture is so refreshing. I hear about it. I've never been a part of it, obviously, but hearing about, or I've also seen it portrayed in media. Like when people go to work in France, they'll go to work, maybe they'll take a nap, and they'll all go to lunch together for like an hour and a half, and they'll come back, probably do a little work for 30 minutes, and then everybody goes home. And that's just it. They do so much, like they do such a less amount, but still get things, and they still have a great quality of life. They have a great quality work life. And they know they're just going to come back and do the same thing every day. And I just feel like we've lost the plot, because granted, when people outside of the US have their jobs, they, like, what was the term? I heard this before when people in America do. I think they live to work, right? Like we have this constant, oh, this is my job. I go to work and I do this. And I just like, when people outside of the US, they just, they live, but, they also work, right? And I've seen that all the time. I'm like, why can't we just make that shift? I feel like people will be more prone to come back to their jobs when they know that it's just not as much urgency, Of course, there are things that need to get done. There are deadlines to be made. But this constant need of hustling, working, and all this stuff. I feel like I even feel like workplaces could get like a revamping of some sort. Nobody wants to come to work for several years to come in an office that has no color. So, yes, I just thought, before I get into my spiel about that, I just felt like that needed to be addressed. So again, I feel like we're not embracing a slow life. Now, again, there are some people who like the fast pacedness and people who like getting up and doing the grind and having that stuff. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. I'm not saying that that's something that you should look into, but if you are in a state right now, you're like, man, I need to get my life together. I just feel like some things need to change. And everywhere you go on your phones, well, no, I feel like everywhere you go, you're bombarded with people telling you, you need to make sure that you do all these things before 10:30 in the morning. You need to make sure that you make sure that you eat all your calories. Well, okay. Make sure that you have a decent diet. I will agree. A nice, healthy, balanced diet is ideal. Absolutely. But man, being someone who's on Pinterest a lot and someone who can be on TikTok a good chunk of the time, but TikTok is the main driver of that, because this is social media. These are people's lives that they choose to put on there. And the thing is, you don't know how consistent they are. This is literally like one video that you see on your timeline. And if you choose to follow them, of course, you'll probably show up more. But I feel like some of it can be fabricated. Now, I can't speak for these people, but you still have to remember that these are the clips that made it. This is what makes the screen. A lot of people aren't really genuine on social media, and it takes a lot of courage to be like, you know what, this is me. I didn't feel like getting up and brushing my teeth, but we're going to anyway. Like, there's a lot of people who are very relatable in that way, and I applaud them for that. But this whole like polished idea of this culture of where we just getting up and grinding and having everything to do, it gets really overwhelming, especially somebody myself who can get pretty anxious from time to time, and I can get overstimulated very, very fast. So for me, that whole idea of just making sure that there's something in my time block for every hour of every minute of every day is exhausting. And the stories that we tell from each other, I feel like those get lost, because from what I remember, there's so many things that happen randomly. And I feel like when you plan everything. Because, okay, now I plan my week out, right? But this is solely from a student experience. This is a student perspective. I have all of my classes for this quarter are online. So everything that I see for the week is already handed to me. So what I plan for the week is what I plan for homework wise. And all the other circulating stuff like Radio DePaul, I rehearse tomorrow in my orchestra. But everything other than that, or work, or everything other than that is just like, okay, this is what I have. But I don't know. I think I try to make the time for the things that I want to do. And I feel like this constant hustle culture has made it just try to drill this into your mind that if you fall off, you are a failure. Now, that might be a little far-fetched, but that's what I'm getting from it. There's so many people who are out there like, oh, the only person who's holding you back is you. And that's true. I get that. 100%. But I think, again, we also forget our humanity. There are some days when you feel very productive. You feel like you can overcome all of the things that you were thinking about at 3 o'clock in the morning. And you can get them done at 6 o'clock in the morning. And you get a good chunk of it done. And it's 8:30. And now you want to go back to bed. You take a nap and you get up at like 10:30. You might kind of want to eat, but you can kind of not eat for a couple hours. So you get up and, you try to walk around and try and make use of it. You go on your phone for, just for something, just for like a quick little instant gratification because you know what's going to be there. And then boom, all of a sudden it's 1:30 and you're like, oh no, I feel like I've thrown this life away. Let me get in the shower. I'm going to get up, try and put on some clothes, but like, okay, now I don't know what to do with the day. Like, what am I supposed to do? So I feel like life just kind of falls into itself like that. And if you don't have a set schedule, I feel like it's okay. And I can say this from a very privileged experience, right? I don't have children. I'm not, I don't have my own things. I do have my own things, but I'm just like, this is coming from a student, a 21-year-old person. So I don't have as many responsibilities as someone who's really out there in the workforce. But all I can say is try and find the little beauties in the mundane things that you do. And I'm going to get more into that when after the second part of the show. I'm not going on break yet, but I just want to talk about the hustle culture as a creative. Now, I wanted to make the distinction between people who aren't as creative. I believe everyone is creative. Now, that can be argued, but I feel like everyone has some sort of creative bone in their body. And I don't know where it could lead to. It's not like it could probably not be the most traditional ways of creativity. You could just be someone who really likes organization, who really likes color coding, who really likes, in the end, it's still creative, right? But someone who's truly, these are people who are putting their creativity towards their career. They want to use their creativity as the main driver of what they do in their lives that will more than likely, hopefully, make them money. And that's hard because creativity isn't necessarily forced sometimes. You can force it for sure. I will say that. You can force creativity, but will you be proud of it? That's up to you. So when I think about my creativity, right, especially in times like this, when I think of ideas for Tuesday hours, for videos, I'm working on a book right now, so hopefully, in the near future that you'll hear about it. That project has been in the works for like a couple of years. The idea of making a mass project was something that I want to work on for the past couple of years. When I started college. Woo! 4 years ago. So the idea of a project that was self-reflective had been in the works for about 4 years. And at first it was going to be a short film. And then it was going to be like a short film that was just going to be centered around me. And then life started happening and I was like, okay, what if I made like a documentary? That's still like a small sector that I think about. But on top of the documentary, I was like, hi. Sorry, there's somebody from the studio who just died. Okay, anyway. But on top of that, I was thinking about a documentary. I started working on a documentary that's still in the works. Some of this pushed to the side. But I was like, okay, this is different, a separate idea. But then I moved back home and I was like, what if I wrote a book? Because it's funny, but from when I'm old and gray, right? And I'm, on my last, the final hour, I never want to be that person and be like, man, I never wrote that novel. So like, I definitely want to write, and I definitely love writing. I've written out of numerous journals ever since I was 14, and writing this book has been liberating. It's been very fun, but it's also very hard. Like I can't describe to you how much it really takes out of you. And the thing about being creative, and being creative for a very long time, and when I mean a long time, like that space that you're just deciding to be creative for a couple of hours, when you're done, you're supposed to be tired. When you're creative for like a very long time, whether it's painting or you're writing something or you're editing something, you're being the most creative self and you're in that point. But once you're done, you're exhausted. So imagine doing that constantly. There are writers out there like Zora Neale Hurston and James Baldwin and who else? What is her name? Well, why can't I get Toni Morrison? They all have their own writing styles, their writing routines when they get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and they try and write as much while also having families, right? But those little times when they write, because I watched videos of people doing the creative their own, just like trying to follow their writing routine. A part of it was like, write what you can, or just write what you feel at the time, not try to force anything. But the act of actually doing something was there. So the creativity, especially when it's a long-term project, sometimes life is the best way to be creative. Like, I mean, you can't really do much of a creative project when you're sitting in one place for a long time. So as I've been writing this book, I've been writing the book, but also allowing my life to write the book itself, if that makes sense. So I'll write a really good chapter, I'll write a good several pages, but then I'll go out and have some fun with my friends. And I'm like, this is part of the book that I want to add. And I'm not going to write it right now. But my recall and my memory is pretty vivid for me. And I truly enjoy making the moment at the time. And sometimes I'll record something, but I'll never post it. And I keep it to myself. And that creativity isn't rushed. It's not that's not the mandated thing that I put in my time block to just find something to write. It just happens. But you fall into that, like, you're getting too comfortable. Maybe you should just force yourself. The discipline and the allowing yourself to breathe is hard. The lines can be a bit blurred. So honestly, that was the first half. Shall I talk about how my routines usually go? I don't really have too much of a routine. The same thing that changed, the only thing that stays the same, is that I wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning every day, or at least try to. My alarm goes off every day at 7 because I had a conversation with my friend Demaya about falling asleep and how we need more sleep. And I was talking to her and I was like, hey, we were talking about sleep, and I was like, yeah, I get a good amount of sleep every night. I get about 6 hours. And Demaya was like, yeah, Trin, so that's not a good amount of sleep. She's like, 6 hours is actually not good. That is not enough. You actually need about 7 to 9. 7 to 9. Oh no. I don't know how that's gonna work. I've been trying. I think I tried to be a little consistent for a few days, but honestly, the life gets ahead of me. But I deserve the amount of sleep to get. And whatever doesn't get done will get done the next day, because I can only focus on what today is. So the next day, it'll be Trinity's problem, and we'll figure it out, and we'll do it over and over again until I feel content with it. So I'm going to put you guys on a break. And then when we come back, I will talk about finding the extraordinary in the ordinary. So I'll put you guys on a quick break, and I will be right back. Hi guys, I'm back. And guess what? The poll works now. So, back to fiction and nonfiction really quick. My Instagram works again. We have 76% of people who like fiction, who enjoy it more, and 24% of people who like nonfiction. So yeah, that was gonna bother me, guys. So finally it worked. But If you're just coming back, if you're coming back for the first time, this is the Lore Love Tales by Trinity Gwen, or not by, it's your host, Trinity Gwen. You want to call me. And this week we are talking about how the hustle culture is ruining storytelling and the quality of life. And although hustle culture is very productive and of course, has been researched for a while, I feel like we're losing the plot. So, without further ado, we're getting to the second half. So, I wanted to talk about how putting the extraordinary in just the ordinary, right? There was this video that I watched by one of these YouTubers that I watch. Her name is Morgan Evelyn Cook. Actually, if you remember that name, I mentioned her last week in our Tuesday hour, in which we talked about finding art in yourself and why rewatching shows are very interesting, and why do we do those things, and what we give, what do we gain from rewatching something that we love so much and we already know about. But she mentioned that week, I think the week before, to her community that she wasn't posting in because she had a cool editing style that she wanted to try out, and it would take longer than it needed to be. So there would be another video that would come out the next following week, and she apologized. And I mentioned last week how interesting it is for people, regular people who content create, still have to explain themselves. And I felt like they didn't need to, but even still, the person who created this community, she felt that she had a sense of responsibility to tend to the people who supported her. And I get that. I can respect that. But really, in the grand scheme of things, it's just like, man, you just had to explain yourself why you just didn't feel like, or you couldn't because it took too long. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. But regardless, right? There's this video that she talked about and she created. And boy, the editing style was really great. I can tell. It was like as soon as it opened, I was like, oh, here we go. This is new. She'd already had a really great editing style before, but to explain who she is a Chicago YouTuber, and she talks about a slow lifestyle, slow buying, how I don't know how to explain it, but I can't explain it. I don't know why, but she is a girl who understands that life gets really hectic, and as someone who's very anxious, she is also an anxious girl herself. She talks about what has worked for her slow buying years, like slow fashion, and not necessarily aiding to fast fashion and needing all of the things and the trends and feeding into what you need to have the best life possible, but having those experiences that don't necessarily need to be fully captured, I guess. Like all of the things, the videos that she makes videos about either the clothes that she wears, right? She has like a slow buying year sometimes where she doesn't necessarily buy too much, or if she does, she'll buy secondhand, or she'll just note how many things that she likes to wear and just focus that on what she needs to buy. And some of the things that we allow ourselves to buy probably don't even get worn. So she's made videos like that. She's made videos about a healthier a healthier way of living, and it's very refreshing. I hope that explained it to the best of my ability, but what I'm going to get further into in her video, I hope it does it more justice. So she talks about how her life has changed. Now, she wasn't necessarily born in Chicago. She's actually from Michigan, and she talked about how there were shows that she rewatched constantly, and one of them was The Office. And when she started watching The Office, she just realized much later that what she was loving so much about the show was what she really wanted. And that's something that I mentioned last week, right? Like we insert ourselves in art to feel closer to it, and without really realizing what we need from it. So she found that at the time, she needed to find more substance in her life. She felt like the ordinary was just ordinary and everything was mundane. And in order to have like a very fulfilling life is to have so many things going on for her. Like you need the high status Instagram, and you need the fast moving pace of living in the city, of constantly being everything everywhere all at once. So she did everything that she could to get good grades and scholarships and everything like that, to move to New York, to go to NYU, to be in this big booming city of opportunity. And you know everything about, you know, New York City. Everyone was like, oh, it's the Big Apple. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. And after a while, she didn't have the best experience there. So that really shifted for her when she moved to London for study abroad. She studied abroad. I think she said maybe a semester, but she studied abroad in London. And she talked about how her experience with living with like 4 or 5 women and just living with the mundane things in life. Now, she's mentioned, she's like, now, did we do extraordinary things there and then did extraordinary places? Absolutely. But the best thing that made her life extraordinary was just the ordinary things that we did in our life that made it worthwhile, made everything memorable. And to go back from what she was talking about in The Office and what she was trying to find was what the show was actually about. Now, I mentioned, sorry, I just cracked my knuckles. I don't know if you heard that. I'm sorry. But the Office, right, is amazing, an amazing mockumentary. But the show really is not, the show is not about a show about people who sell paper. It's about people who sell paper. And the emphasis that I put on the second people is important because when you watch the show, you realize that, yes, these are a group of people who are coming into work every day in their business casual attire, selling paper. But they're also trying to find the beauty in what this job is really about. Like, of course, everybody who's in corporate, if you've done these things before, if you've seen The Office, I feel like it's a great example or a great capture of the work-life balance, because yes, you're in this place from 9 to 5, from 9 to 5, but there are some people who are like Jim who are trying to find the fun in such a mundane job. You're literally selling paper, like just boxes of paper. That's what you're selling. That's it. And you have to have meetings about why this paper is best for this paper, and you're selling things to people, selling things to corporations who print the paper, but all they really sell is paper. So Jim, after a while, we see how Jim creates this community and this family by making up Olympics in the workplace, pulling pranks on people, making snide comments and stuff like that throughout all of it, making bets, and finding love at the same time. And all of these people in The Office, we find ourselves in all of these characters because at one point in our lives, we've been in a group and we've been in close proximity with the same people for several months at a time, several years at a time even. But we have so many fond memories of them. And that's especially why the show has such a hold on a lot of people who love the show so much all the way to the end, because you feel like you've worked with them. You feel like you've been with these characters because they're just like your friends. Like, we're all in this place together and we all need to make money, but we're going to try and find some light out of it. I've been working at this company for 20-ish years, but I promise you I'm going to work so hard that I get this pretzel, that I get this donut, I get this recognition so I can get this gift card or this, that, and the third, so I can work this vacation days. You're working around the mundane to make it less mundane. And I feel like that's the opposite of what people have been doing. I don't know. It can very much be argued. But again, people do whatever they want with their lives. I just feel like a slow life is not a boring life. It's not boring at all. You can make it it can be boring if you want it to be boring. But at the end of the day, it's your life. And just because you're not waking up at the crack of dawn and running 2 miles before 7 a.m. and then eating 6 eggs and drinking all of these vitamins and smoothies and stuff like that, and making sure that you write in your gratitude. I'm not getting on people who write in their journal because I write in my journal, but all of these things to make yourself feel like you're like the best person ever. I don't know. It just kind of rubs me the wrong way. If you want to have a conversation about it, we can. If you're obviously, when I record these, because I'm looking at my camera right now, if you guys want to have a conversation about it, you can comment on it. But if you want to have a conversation now live, we can, like Instagram, TREN_MONAE, and then I could just put it on my story or something like that. I guess it's cool, and then maybe I can talk about it next week. But honestly, I felt like that needed to be said, because the stories that we share, the stories that I've seen with a lot of shows, just come from mundane points of life. I think about the first thing that I thought about was Regular Show. G. J.G. Quintel, I think he created the show, and he is the voice of Mordecai. And honestly, I have to say, Regular Show is probably one of the best shows that encapsulate me, because there are some times in my life now that I just unironically, when something goes wrong, I'm like, oh, what? Like, I do that all the time. I'm like, like, it's so bad. It's just in my brain. And like, something is just like, something just goes awry. I'm like, like, it does. I just do that all the time. And the show's creation was just based, and the voices of everybody and how they talk to each other was based on JG's life in college, and how everyone talked to each other, how they had chants, and like, whoa, like, that's what they used to do in college. And college is whatever you want to make it to be. There's this constant thing going around about, oh, college is a waste of time. College is whatever you need to make it. That's a whole nother spiel in of itself. And maybe if I can find some way to integrate that in an episode or a Tuesday hour from now, maybe I can, if that's something that you want. Sure, coming from a college student who's in college, who's using a college studio right now, I personally don't think that college is a waste of time. I don't think so at all. But I digress. I say all that to say this: the mundane things are truly what make us who we are. And I don't think it's just from having a set, routine every single day. It depends, though. I mean, just like I said, from the people in the office, like, they may come to work every day, clock in at the same time every day, try and wear around the same kind of clothes every day. But the content of every day is very different. And I think that's just what matters the most. So, yeah, in the last couple of bits, I'll explain what does the show, again, the show teaches us how to find the mundane things of our lives, and whether we approach them as something as we can't control, or is it something that we can control and just kind of like make it light, make it funny, make it fluffy. Because working at jobs, especially towards what you really want to work for, like I talked about way in the very first Tuesday hour, there are jobs that you've had or you have right now that are placeholder jobs. These are jobs that you definitely don't see yourself doing for a very long time, but they put money in your pocket. And years from now, when you feel like you're exactly where you are, you can look at those jobs and be like, man, I hated that job. I hated being at that office. But you know what? There were some people at that job that made it worthwhile. They made it so much fun. And you can see those memories vividly. And you may think at that time that does not build any of your character, but it truly does. It builds your people skills, because you realize not only the people you work with make you realize that there are more personalities, but depending on where you work, prepare you for a lot of personalities. Like, if you've worked in customer service, any type of customer service, like food, retail, all of those things, you realize there are a lot of people that don't have a lot of common sense, unfortunately. And it's not okay. I was about to say it's okay, but these are grown people that are just like, where do I go for this, when it's like literally right next to them? So yes, I'm sure there are some people out there who have been servers and they're like, oh, what would you guys like to drink? And one of them was like, oh, what do you guys have to drink? And they'll say something like, oh, we have Coke products. And they're like, oh, so do you have Pepsi? What? You know what I mean? I don't know. Anyway, there's this thing that I've thought about for a while, especially a couple years ago, at a point in my life where I felt like I was just like surviving and not living. So I feel like how I see the hustle culture, I feel like it's not necessarily living, because living to me personally feels like taking each day as each day and listening to what you want to do. Surviving feels like this is what I have to do. I feel like surviving was just like, okay, I did this. Now I can go to sleep safely, I guess. You know what I mean? I feel like surviving is just, you're not actively enriching your mind. Surviving is just like doing the things that you have to do. And living is just like doing the things that you want to do. So whatever that looks like to you, if it does look like having things as at a set time and time blocking and making sure, because time blocking, I say that, but time blocking is kind of productive. Like if you feel like you have a lot to do, instead of doing a to-do list and you're like, okay, I need to get this homework done in this amount of hours. I need to finish this discussion board in 30 minutes. This essay, I need to proofread it. I'm going to take 20 minutes on that. This assignment I haven't even looked at, I'm going to take an hour and a half. Do that. See how that works. That type of time blocking, I'm not going to knock that because I've done that before, and you feel like you get a lot more done than just a list. Because I think the list in of itself just makes you overwhelmed. And once you start making those time alarms, you're like, okay, time for the next thing. Okay, time for the next thing. But it's really up to you. When you feel like, how do you feel when you feel like you're surviving or living? Or is there a point in your life where you felt like you were truly living? And was there a time when you just felt like you were just surviving? And when you felt like you were just surviving, were you finding points of your life to make it feel like you were living over that surviving? Or were you just like, okay, I'm just going to do this and hopefully it gets better? So if you're in that point where right now when you're like surviving, what can you do? How can you expand the story that you're telling right now? Because everyone's life has a story. And 20 years from now, I'm saying this 20 years from now because 42-year-old trend, I'm looking and thinking about this from now. 20 years from now, when you felt like you were just surviving, were there points in your life where you felt like, okay, I was just solely surviving, but there was this one time, you know? Those are worthwhile. So, one thing that I want to add as well, because I was supposed to add a fun fact and I've been doing it, and it's funny because Trin from a couple hours ago circled the fun fact and said, don't forget in all caps and like exclamation points all over the place. The fun fact from, I'm going to say from The Office because I use that, was that there were a lot of people in the main cast who were auditioned to be someone else or wanted to be somebody else. And I think about that now and I'm like, no, this casting was perfect. And you think about that a lot because when shows or movies have been out for a very long time and they've gained all this traction, and then there's some fun facts like, oh, actually, that person was actually not going to be that role. That was actually going to be played by such and such. I'm like, what? I don't think I can see it any other way. And I think those are the best parts. I think when you know, when a whole mass of people who are like, no, this is better, that's how you know you've done something right. So the fun fact is, Rainn Wilson, who plays Dwight, actually auditioned to be Michael Scott. Now, if you're in Office, the Office fanatic, you already know these things. So sorry. But I just felt like this needed to be said. Or maybe this is just a reminder. Who knows? Michael Scott is actually played by Steve Carell, who was actually, it was almost played by Bob Odenkirk, who actually, funny enough, several seasons later in the show, played a boss that was like Michael Scott when Pam wanted to work somewhere else, and Pam was like, oh my gosh, he's just like Michael Scott. This is another Michael Scott. So I thought that was funny. I like that they incorporated that in there. And then Jim, who was played by John Krasinski, auditioned to be Dwight. And it's funny because if you've watched the show, there are multiple times where Jim will dress up like Dwight and play him. And I thought that was a good, now that I know that now, I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. So yeah, that's cool. The last thing that I will say is a quote from the last episode of The Office. And I feel like this encapsulates the whole thing of what we're talking about today. And near the end, which is really cool. The last episode is just so bittersweet. And it's, whenever I think about the last episode, I think about Andy singing I'll Remember You. I don't know if that's the full title of the song, but that song. And it's interesting because every time before that last episode, Andy is singing, he's singing all this stuff. There are some times where they enjoy his singing, but often, like throughout the show, everyone gets annoyed by it. But since there's been so much forced proximity within everyone, the last point when they knew that this was going to be the last time for a very long time that they were here, Andy singing, they were just like in awe. They were all just honed in. And they knew that it's just one of those things which is like, you don't know how good you have it until it's gone. So when I saw that, I was like, wow, this is such a full circle moment. They all along they probably just enjoyed his presence, but until then, when they knew this would be the last one, they really held it close to their heart. So Pam Beesly, if you remember, I think this was actually the last thing that was like the last line of the episode when she said, "There's a lot of beauty in ordinary things." Isn't that kind of the point? And it's just like, yeah, like ordinary can be whatever you want. Just like I said last week, you guys, I cook with these notes. I don't know if you notice, but a lot of this stuff that I talk about just flows and falls into each other. And I take my time. Don't ask me when I made these notes, but I rest assured they all come together, and you can pinpoint from each Tuesday hour from when you listen live or if you watch on YouTube that you can find something in all of these things, because what I try to emphasize in this show is how important media encapsulates all of us, and we see each other, we see ourselves in all of these things, and no matter what, storytelling will always be the drivers of our lives. And I hope that your story, regardless of who you tell to your friends, your family, some random stranger you meet, hopefully they find some comfort in your story, and hopefully you find comfort in theirs. So this has been the Loyal Love Tales with your host Trinity Gwen. I hope that you liked this Tuesday hour. If you want to reach out and support and see behind the scenes, I will plug my things one last time for today. My Instagram is Tren_MONAE. Monet, like, Claude Monet, but not the way that it's spelled, MONAE. Because I feel like M and N's get mixed up in hearing. Sorry, I could be a little over-explanative sometimes, but you get it. And then my YouTube is Tren Universe, TREN Universe. And yes, there will be something Steven Universe related very, very soon. Maybe later on. There are no other... Oh, if you want to follow me on TikTok, sure. There's Tren_G, because my last name's Gwen. That's my TikTok. Like I said last week, I talked about BoJack Horseman and how I have numerous TikToks that have BoJack Horseman audio. Specifically, a good chunk of them come from Free Churro, which is my favorite episode. If you take that information on what you will. If you want to go find those, go ahead, go crazy. I love those TikToks. But yes, those are my tags. I don't have Twitter, and I don't use Snapchat anymore unless I need to find like my memories or something. That's the only thing. But yes, I hope to see you guys next Tuesday, which we meet every Tuesday from 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. And that's been it. Have a great rest of your day, week, wherever you're watching this, and I will see you guys soon. Bye, guys.